Hey guys, tonight we are going to transport ourselves back to the height of the Roman Empire, specifically to a sweltering afternoon in the year 216 AD. We're going to walk the dusty streets of the Eternal City and step inside the absolute colossus of ancient engineering known as the Baths of Caracalla. It's a place of marble, steam, political gossip and unparalleled luxury. A sprawling leisure centre that makes your local gym look like a broom closet. But let's be real for a second, you probably wouldn't survive this trip. Between the lead in the water pipes, the questionable hygiene of soaking in a pool with 3,000 other unwashed strangers, and the distinct possibility of slipping on an olive oil spill and cracking your head open on a mosaic, the odds are definitely not in your favour. So get yourself comfortable. If you fancy keeping your seat reserved for future expeditions without getting lost in the algorithmic maze, you know which buttons to press. It's the modern equivalent of tossing a coin in the fountain, just a little insurance for the journey ahead. Also, drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing how global this little community has become. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the middle of the Via Nova, and the first thing you notice is the heat. It is a thick physical weight pressing down on your shoulders, a stifling blanket of mid-afternoon humidity that seems to rise from the cobblestones themselves. The sun is high, beating down with that particular Mediterranean intensity that bleaches the colour out of everything, turning the dusty streets into a blinding haze of white and beige. You're wearing a simple linen tunic, already damp with sweat at the small of your back, and your leather sandals slap rhythmically against the basalt paving stones. Rome is loud. It's always loud, but right now, during the bustle of the afternoon, it's a cacophony. You hear the rumble of heavy cartwheels. Though strictly speaking, heavy transport is banned during the day, there's always someone bending the rules, mixed with the shouting of street vendors hawking salted fish, the braying of a donkey that sounds like it's given up on life, and the endless droning hum of a million people living on top of one another. You weave through the crowd, dodging a group of soldiers who look like they've had a bit too much wine for this time of day, and step around a pile of refuse that you're just going to pretend isn't exactly what it smells like. But you aren't here for the squalor, you're here for the escape. Ahead of you, rising up like a man-made mountain range against the deep blue Italian sky, is your destination, the Thermae Antoninianae. History will remember them as the Baths of Caracalla, named after the emperor who commissioned them, but if you called him Caracalla to his face, which refers to the hooded Gallic cloak he likes to wear, you'd likely find yourself becoming very intimately acquainted with the pointy end of a gladius. So we'll just stick to the formal name for now to keep your head attached to your shoulders. As you draw closer, the sheer scale of the complex begins to warp your sense of perspective. It's not just a building, it's a statement. 1 billion bricks were used to construct this place. That's not an exaggeration for dramatic effect. It's a literal estimate. Millions of bricks, faced with concrete and covered in marble, soaring up to heights that seem impossible without modern steel girders. It covers about 62 acres, which is roughly the size of a small town or a very ambitious golf course, dropped right into the southern part of the city. You pause for a moment at a street corner, wiping dust from your forehead with the back of your hand just to take it in. The perimeter wall alone is a fortress, designed to separate the grime of the city from the paradise within. It's a stark reminder of the power of the state. Emperor Caracalla might be a paranoid, fratricidal maniac who murdered his own brother in their mother's arms. Historians still argue whether his massive building projects were a genuine attempt at public service, or just a desperate, colossal bribe to keep the Roman populace from rioting. But man, does he know how to build a spa. You continue walking, the crowd thickening as you merge with the flow of people heading toward the entrance. It's a river of humanity. There are senators in bright white togas that look suspiciously clean given the dust, slaves carrying bundles of towels and oil flasks, rough-looking labourers hoping to wash off the day's grime, and merchants shouting into the air as if the volume of their voice correlates directly to their profit margins. It's the ultimate equaliser. In Rome, not everyone can vote, and certainly not everyone can eat peacock tongues for dinner, but almost everyone can go to the baths. To your left, you see the massive arches of the Aqua Antoniniana, the special branch of the Aqua Marcia aqueduct built solely to feed this thirsting beast. It looms overhead, a stone artery pulsing with water brought from miles away in the hills. It's dripping slightly, creating little muddy puddles that you carefully step over. You have to admire the plumbing. The Romans might not have figured out germ theory, but they could move water like nobody's business. If they had focused that energy on the internet, we'd probably have Wi-Fi signals on Mars by now. The heat is getting to you. You can feel the grit of the road between your toes, that annoying sensation of small pebbles stuck in your sandals. You crave the water. You can almost smell it from here. A faint scent of wood smoke from the furnaces mixed with the clean mineral tang of wet stone, cutting through the heavy city stench of garlic and sewage. As you approach the outer precinct, the architecture shifts. The chaotic jumble of insulae, those rickety apartment blocks that have a nasty habit of collapsing, gives way to organised grandeur. You pass a row of shops built into the outer walls of the complex. A vendor thrusts a skewer of dubious-looking meat toward you. "Sausages! Hot sausages! Best in the district!" he yells. You decline. You're about to go exercise. The last thing you need is a stomach full of mystery pork and heartburn that feels like Vesuvius erupting in your esophagus. You look up at the towering facade of the main bathhouse visible over the enclosure wall. It glitters in the sun. The amount of marble used here is staggering. They say Caracalla stripped half the quarries in the empire to clad this beast. Grey granite from Egypt, yellow marble from Numidia, green porphyry from Sparta. It's a geological map of Roman conquest, all polished to a mirror shine. It's designed to make you feel small, and it's working. You feel like an ant crawling toward a sugar cube the size of the moon. There's a fascinating, slightly quirky detail you notice as you scan the skyline of the complex. The entire structure is oriented strictly on a northeast-southwest axis. It's not random. It was designed so that the Caldarium, the hot room, utilizes the sun's position to stay naturally heated all afternoon. Basically the ancient version of passive solar heating. It's brilliant, really. Although it does mean that if you come in the morning, the lighting is all wrong for your selfies. Not that you have a phone, or pockets. The noise of the street changes pitch as you get closer to the main gates. It becomes more excited, more anticipatory. People are looking forward to this. For many, this is the highlight of their day, their living room, their business office, and their doctor's appointment all rolled into one. You adjust your tunic, checking to make sure your few coins are secure in your belt. You don't want to be fumbling for change at the entrance like a tourist who doesn't know the currency. You reach the shadow of the great perimeter wall. The air is slightly cooler here, shaded by the massive brickwork. You take a deep breath, inhaling the dust and the anticipation. The roar of the city is behind you, and ahead lies the promise of water, steam, and the kind of relaxation that modern civilization has somehow forgotten how to replicate. You are just one small drop in the ocean of Rome, flowing toward the drain. The behemoth waits. You shuffle forward in the queue, pressed shoulder to shoulder, with a burly man who smells faintly of sawdust and uncomfortably strongly of garlic. The line is moving surprisingly fast, a testament to Roman efficiency that usually only applies when they are invading a country or collecting taxes. Here, at the turnstiles of the Thermae, that bureaucratic competence is turned toward getting you naked and wet as quickly as possible. You reach the entrance booth, a small niche carved into the massive brickwork where an overworked slave sits with a counting board. You fish around in your belt and pull out a single coin, a quadrans. It's a tiny, almost worthless piece of bronze, the smallest denomination in the Roman currency system. To put that in perspective, a loaf of bread might cost you 2 arses, and there are 4 quadrantes in an as. So admission to the greatest luxury resort on planet Earth costs you roughly 1/8 of a loaf of bread. It's essentially free. This is the bread and circuses policy in action. Keep the people clean, entertained and distracted, and maybe they won't notice the empire is slowly crumbling around the edges. You flick the coin onto the counter. The slave doesn't even look up at you. He just swipes the bronze into a box that rattles with the contributions of 1,000 other souls. You pass through the narrow entryway, a simple choke point designed to control the flow of the mob, and then, suddenly the world opens up. If the street outside was a chaotic assault on your senses, the interior of the complex is a calculated symphony of overwhelming grandeur. You step out into the vast open-air enclosure that surrounds the central bathhouse, and for a second, your brain refuses to process the scale of what you're looking at. You're standing in a garden precinct that feels less like a park and more like the private estate of a god who has a really good landscape architect. The ground beneath your sandals changes from the rough basalt of the street to smooth, patterned pavement. Enormous columns of coloured marble line the porticos that wrap around the perimeter, providing shade for the weary. You take a moment to just stand there, blinking in the sunlight, trying to absorb the sheer volume of sensory data. The noise is different here. It's no longer the angry roar of traffic, it's the high-energy buzz of leisure. It sounds like a modern shopping mall during the holidays, amplified by stone surfaces that refuse to let a single sound wave die a natural death. You hear the splash of fountains. There are fountains everywhere, spraying water into the air just because they can, mingled with the rhythmic thud of leather balls being kicked, the slap of skin on skin from wrestling matches, and the omnipresent murmur of gossip. You begin to walk down the central avenue toward the main building, which sits in the centre of this massive square like a crown jewel. The landscaping is immaculate. Rows of cypress trees cut sharp vertical lines against the soft arches of the architecture. There are carefully tended box hedges and flower beds bursting with colour, a stark contrast to the dust-choked grey of the city you just left. As you wander deeper into the enclosure, you realise this isn't just a place to wash. It's a cultural centre. To your right and left, built into the massive perimeter walls, are two gargantuan exedrae, semicircular recesses that house the libraries. Yes, libraries. One for Greek texts, one for Latin. Because obviously nothing says post-workout cool-down like reading a scroll on Stoic philosophy while wearing a towel. It's the ancient equivalent of listening to a smart podcast at the gym so you can feel superior to the guy doing bicep curls next to you. You pass a group of statues that make you stop in your tracks. This place is dripping with art. We're talking about museum-quality masterpieces just sitting out in the open air. The Farnese bull, a mountain of marble depicting a very intense mythological punishment involving a bull and a lot of rope, is looming nearby. It was carved from a single block of marble, a fact that seems physically impossible given its size. You stare at the rippling muscles of the stone figures, wondering if the sculptor had ever actually seen a bull or just had a nightmare about one once. While you admire the art, you notice the crowd is eclectic. That's the polite way to put it. The Baths of Caracalla are a melting pot. You see a group of wealthy patricians walking with their entourage, their togas draped in that complicated, high-fashion way that prevents them from using their left arm. They're ignoring a group of soldiers playing a dice game on the steps of a fountain. Further down, there's a knot of philosophers arguing about the nature of the soul, their beards wagging furiously, while a vendor selling pastries walks right through their debate, shouting about his honey cakes. And then there are the women, or are there? You scan the crowd. This brings us to a point that historians still argue about fiercely, the issue of mixed bathing. Did men and women swim together in these massive imperial baths? Some sources suggest it was a free-for-all, a scandalous mixed-gender pool party that would make a Victorian faint. Others claim there were strict time slots, women in the morning, men in the afternoon. Given that it's the prime afternoon slot right now and you see mostly men, then you might assume the latter. But then you spot a woman walking confidently toward the entrance with her own slave in tow, and the lines blur. The rules in Rome are often more like guidelines, depending on who is currently emperor and how much they care about moral decency this week. You continue navigating the courtyard, dodging a young boy rolling a hoop who nearly takes out your knees. The main building is getting closer, and it is terrifyingly large. The facade is a wall of windows, massive arched windows glazed with thin sheets of mica or glass. This is a mainstream historical fact that blows people's minds. The Romans had glass windows. They weren't perfect, clear panes like we have today, but they allowed the interior to be flooded with natural light while keeping the heat in. The sun reflects off them, turning the building into a glittering fortress of light. The air here feels heavy, not just with heat, but with moisture. You're getting close to the thermal core. The humidity is leaking out of the massive doors, curling around the columns like a living thing. You can smell the distinct scent of burning wood, tons of it, being consumed in the subterranean furnaces to keep the water boiling. It's a smell that signifies power, the power to control the elements, to make winter feel like summer, to turn a dry hill into a tropical swamp. You approach the grand staircase leading up to the main block. The sensory chaos reaches its peak here. This is the staging ground. People are meeting friends, finishing snacks, or just lingering to be seen. It's the ancient social network. If you aren't seen at the baths, do you even exist in Roman society? Probably not. You check your belongings one last time. You have your towel, your flask of oil, and your strigil, that curved metal scraping tool we'll get to later. You grip them tightly. The vibe here is relaxed, but theft is rampant. The Roman poet Martial wrote distinct complaints about people stealing napkins and towels at the baths. Imagine getting your toga stolen and having to walk home naked through the forum. That's a level of embarrassment you want to avoid. You step onto the first stair. The stone is warm under your feet. Above you, the entrance archway soars 50 feet into the air, dwarfing you, reminding you that you are a subject of the Empire, and the Empire is vast. You are leaving the real world of commerce and dust behind, and stepping into the Apoditarium, the locker room, but don't let the modern terminology fool you. This isn't a room with rows of grey metal lockers and a bench that smells like old socks. It's the first true test of your bathhouse survival skills, and if you're not careful, it's where you'll lose everything you brought with you. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself against the wall of noise emanating from the doorway, and cross the threshold. You step through the colossal doorway and into the Apoditarium, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. It's an intense, sinus-clearing cocktail of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, perfumed oils, and damp wool. If the outside world was loud, this room is a sonic weapon. The high-vaulted ceilings, beautifully decorated with stucco reliefs of sea monsters and nymphs, act like an echo chamber designed by a sadist. Every shout, every laugh, every slap of a sandal against stone is amplified and bounced back at you until it creates a dull roar that vibrates in your chest. This is the locker room Roman style, but forget about orderly rows of benches and private changing stalls. This is a mosh pit of nudity and petty crime. The room is vast, a rectangular hall lined with niches set into the walls about shoulder height. These are the lockers. There are no doors on them, no combination locks, just open stone cubbies where you are expected to stash your worldly goods. You scan the room, looking for an empty shelf. It's chaos. Men are stripping off tunics, hopping on one foot to yank off sandals, and folding togas with the care usually reserved for religious artifacts. You navigate through the sea of flesh. It's a very democratic experience. In the Apoditarium, the social hierarchy of Rome gets stripped away, literally. Once the toga comes off, it's much harder to tell the senator from the shopkeeper. A paunch is a paunch regardless of your tax bracket. Although if you look closely, you can still spot the differences. The wealthy guys are the ones with the smooth, unblemished skin of people who don't work in the sun, flanked by slaves who are doing the actual disrobing for them. Speaking of slaves, they are everywhere. They function as the living infrastructure of the room. You see a wealthy patron standing motionless, arms out like a scarecrow, while two servants peel his tunic off him. Another slave stands guard in front of a niche, arms crossed, staring daggers at anyone who gets too close. This is the capsarius, the locker attendant. But unlike modern gym staff, these guys are privately owned human security systems. You find a small empty niche near a corner. It's not ideal, a bit too far from the main flow, making it a prime target for sneak thieves. But it's all you've got. You start to undress. You pull your tunic over your head, feeling the cooler air of the room hit your damp skin. You fold it neatly and place it in the cubby. Then go the sandals. You're now standing in your sublegaculum, a sort of linen loincloth that serves as ancient underwear. Some guys go fully nude right here. Others keep the loincloth on for the exercise portion. You decide to keep it on. No need to flash the entire empire just yet. Now comes the most dangerous part of your day. You have to leave your stuff. Theft in the baths is such a massive problem that the Romans have a specific legal category for it. Furem balnearium, a bath thief. It's considered a more heinous crime than regular theft because you are vulnerable when you're naked. If you catch a thief here, the punishment isn't a slap on the wrist. It's often immediate, brutal violence, or if the authorities get involved, forced labour in the mines. You look around. You don't have a slave to guard your pile. This is risky. You spot a young boy, maybe 10 years old, leaning against a pillar looking bored. He's a servus, likely waiting for his master, or maybe an enterprising street kid sneaking in. You catch his eye, point to your niche, and hold up a small copper coin. "Watch this," you mouth over the din. He nods, his eyes lighting up at the coin. It's a gamble. He might watch it, or he might run off with your sandals the second you turn the corner. But it's the best insurance you have. As you step away from your niche, you nearly collide with a man who looks like he's been in a brawl. His ear is cauliflowered, and his nose has been broken so many times it looks like a zigzag. He's a boxer, clearly heading for the palaestra. He grunts at you, not aggressively, just acknowledging your existence in his path. You sidestep him, giving him a wide berth. There's a mainstream historical fact you should know about this room: the floor. You look down at the intricate black and white mosaic beneath your bare feet. It depicts tritons and dolphins frolicking in the waves. It's beautiful, but it's also slippery as hell. The combination of tracked-in mud, spilled oil and water makes the floor a hazard. You see an older man slip, his arms windmilling wildly before a nearby slave catches him by the elbow. It's a reminder to tread carefully. While you navigate toward the exit that leads to the exercise yards, you overhear a snippet of conversation that highlights the open scholarly debate of the era. Two men are arguing loudly near the doorway. "It's the miasma," one insists, gesturing wildly. "The bad air causes the fever. You have to sweat it out." "Nonsense," the other counters. "It's an imbalance of the humours. Too much black bile. He needs leeches, not steam." They are debating medicine. The Romans were obsessed with health, but their understanding of it was a mix of brilliant observation and absolute bonkers superstition. The baths were seen as a cure-all. Got a cold? Go to the baths. Broken leg? Baths. Existential dread? Definitely baths. You pause at the threshold leading out of the locker room. The transition is jarring. You are leaving the relative gloom of the Appetitarium for the blinding light of the palaestra, the exercise yard. But before you can go lift weights or wrestle, there is a ritual that must be performed. You can't just go work out with dry skin. That would be uncivilized. You need to be greased. You look to your left, where a group of slaves is dispensing olive oil from a large amphorae. This isn't the high-quality extra virgin stuff you dip your focaccia in. This is industrial-grade bath oil, often scented with things like rose, iris, or if you're cheap, marjoram. The smell is thick and cloying. You realize you're standing in a room that is essentially the gateway between the civilized world of clothing and the raw primal world of the body. Here you are just flesh and bone. The toga that defines your status is gone. The shoes that protect your feet are gone. You are vulnerable. And yet there's a strange sense of community. You see a man helping a stranger untie a stubborn knot in his sandal strap. You see people sharing soap, which was essentially a paste of oil and ash, not the bubbly bars we have. For all the danger and chaos, the Appetitarium is a shared human experience. Everyone here is naked, everyone is cesting, and everyone is just hoping their clothes are still there when they get back. You give the kid guarding your clothes one last look. He's leaning against the wall, staring at a fly buzzing around his head. It doesn't inspire confidence, but you have to trust the process. You turn your back on your worldly possessions and step into the light. You emerge from the locker room and blink against the sudden assault of sunshine. You are now standing on the edge of the palaestra, a massive, open-air exercise courtyard that is bustling with the raw energy of 1,000 men trying to prove they are stronger than the guy standing next to them. But before you can join the fray, you have to deal with the oil situation. You walk over to the oil station, essentially a stone bench where a slave with forearms like tree trunks is waiting. You hand him a small coin and another pittance, and he dips a ladle into a large clay jar. The oil is room temperature, thick and golden green. He splashes it onto your shoulders with a wet smack that startles you. Arms up, he grunts. You lift your arms, and he begins to work the oil into your skin. This isn't a gentle spa massage, it's a functional slathering. His hands are rough, calloused from rubbing down hundreds of bodies a day. He spreads the grease over your chest, your back, your legs. The sensation is weirdly heavy. You feel coated, sealed off from the air. This layer of oil is crucial though. It protects your skin from the sun and the dirt, and later, it will act as the medium to pull all the grime out of your pores. It's the Roman equivalent of a hazmat suit for hygiene. Within a minute, you are glistening like a basted turkey. You step away, feeling a bit sticky and smelling like a salad, and finally take in the scene before you. The palaestra is a spectacle of testosterone and dust. It's a vast rectangle surrounded on three sides by colonnades providing shade, but the centre is open to the merciless Roman sky. The ground is packed earth, covered in a layer of fine sand to soak up sweat and blood. And oh, there is plenty of both. The noise here is different from the locker room. It's guttural. You hear the "ha!" and of exertion, the thud of heavy medicine balls hitting stomachs, and the cheering of spectators betting on impromptu wrestling matches. You wander into the sunlight, the sand coating your oiled feet instantly. It's a gritty feeling, literal sandpaper forming on your soles. To your left, you see a group of men engaged in halteras, a form of weightlifting. But they aren't using barbells. They're holding oddly shaped lead or stone weights that look like old-fashioned telephone receivers, swinging them back and forth to build momentum for a long jump. It's a niche sport, but they take it deadly seriously. One guy launches himself, landing in a spray of sand, and immediately starts arguing about where his heel touched down. Further down, there's a game of Trigon going on. This is a fast-paced ball game involving 3 players standing in a triangle, tossing a hard, leather-stuffed ball at each other as quickly as possible. The goal seems to be to make the other guy drop it, or maybe just to hit him in the face. The rules are a bit opaque to the casual observer. A scorer stands by, counting loudly, 6, 7, miss. It's frantic and looks exhausting. But the real action is in the wrestling pits. You stop to watch a match. 2 men are locked in a grapple, their oiled bodies slipping against each other, making it incredibly hard to get a grip. This is where the dust comes in. You watch as one wrestler breaks the hold, scoops up a handful of dirt, and throws it onto his opponent's back to get some traction. It's a gritty, messy tactic, but it works. He lunges, grabs the dusty patch of skin, and slams the other guy into the ground. The crowd erupts. Here's a quirky historical detail for you. Pro athletes in Rome, particularly gladiators and star charioteers, were the influencers of their day. Their sweat and scraped-off skin cells, mixed with the oil and dirt, were collected, bottled, and sold as an aphrodisiac or a beauty cream for women. It was called gloios. Imagine that. You're watching these guys beat each other up, and someone is waiting in the wings with a jar to scrape the essence of victory off their backs to sell for a premium price. While you watch, you notice a distinct social divide even here in the dirt. The wealthy patrons don't just exercise, they perform exercise. They have personal trainers, yes, that was a thing, barking instructions at them. Lift higher, straighten your back, you move like a cow. The trainers are usually retired gladiators or soldiers, and they don't mince words. The rich guy takes the abuse because it proves he can afford the best abuse in the city. You decide to do some light warm-ups yourself. You find a clear spot of sand and start swinging your arms. The oil makes your skin feel hot, trapping your body heat. It's uncomfortable at first, but as you start to move, you understand the logic. Your muscles loosen up quickly in the heat. Suddenly, a heavy leather ball rolls to your feet. You look up to see a group of soldiers waving at you. "Throw it here, citizen," one yells. You pick up the ball. It's surprisingly heavy, stuffed with sand or hair. You heave it back to them. It's a pathetic throw, wobbling through the air and landing 5 feet short. The soldiers laugh, a booming, good-natured sound. "Eat more porridge," one jokes. You give a weak smile and wave. It's a reminder that physical fitness in Rome is often a matter of survival, not just aesthetics. These guys are built for war. You're built for, well, surviving a narration about baths. As you continue your circuit of the yard, you spot something strange in the corner. A man is reciting poetry, loudly while doing lunges. "Arms and the man I sing," he bellows, dropping into a squat. Nobody pays him much mind. The baths are a magnet for aspiring poets and philosophers looking for a captive audience. If you can't get a booking at the theatre, just scream your verses at naked men lifting weights. They can't run away easily. The sun is beating down on the back of your neck. You can feel the sweat beading up under the layer of oil, creating a slick, sliding sensation. The dust is sticking to you now, turning you into a breaded cutlet. You're becoming part of the landscape, a mixture of human, olive, and earth. Historians still debate the exact nature of the exercise routines for women in these spaces. While we know women exercised, there are famous mosaics of bikini girls lifting weights and throwing discs. It's unclear if they shared the main palaestra with the men during the prime hours. Looking around this aggressive, sweaty mosh pit, you suspect that if they are here, they've carved out their own corner far away from the flying medicine balls and wrestling takedowns. You're starting to feel the burn. Your heart rate is up, your skin is hot, and you are thoroughly coated in filth. This is the paradoxical first step of Roman cleanliness. Getting absolutely, undeniably dirty. You are caked in a grime that feels inches thick. A shadow falls over you. You look up to see the massive brick wall of the main bath building blocking out the sun. It's time to move on, oh me. The exercise is just the appetizer. The main course is the heat. You wipe a mixture of sweat and sand from your eyes, stinging them slightly. You need to get this stuff off you, but water won't do the trick. You need something sharper. You head toward the side of the palaestra where the scraping happens. The roar of the exercise yard fades slightly behind you, replaced by a new sound. The rhythmic scritch, scritch, scritch of metal on skin. It's time to be peeled. You step away from the sun-drenched chaos of the palaestra and into the shaded colonnade that borders the exercise ground. Your chest is heaving slightly, your skin is a gritty mess of oil and sand, and you feel like a piece of meat that's been dropped on a beach. It's a gross, sticky sensation, but oddly satisfying. You've earned your sweat. Now you're about to experience one of the most uniquely Roman aspects of the bathing ritual, the scrape. You approach a designated area where a row of stone benches is lined up against the wall. This is the domain of the strigil. If you've never seen the strigil, imagine a dull, curved metal tool, shaped vaguely like a sickle or a very aggressive shoehorn. It's usually made of bronze or iron, sometimes silver for the fancy folk. The idea is simple. Soap as we know it, that nice lathering bar of Dove, doesn't exist. Instead, the Romans used the oil and sweat mixture on your skin as a solvent to lift the dirt, and then they physically scrape the whole slurry off your body with a metal blade. You find an empty spot on a bench and sit down. A slave approaches you. He's holding a bronze strigil that looks well used, the metal gleaming from years of polishing against human skin. He doesn't ask for permission, he just grabs your arm and starts. Scritch. The sensation is intense. It's not painful exactly, but it's definitely not a caress. The metal edge digs into the layer of oil and grime, pushing it along your skin in a wave of grey sludge. He moves with a practiced rhythm, long, firm strokes that run from your shoulder down to your wrist. Scritch, scritch, flick. With a flick of his wrist, he sends a glob of the dirty oil flying onto the floor where a drain washes it away. It feels exfoliating, extremely exfoliating, like you're shedding a skin like a reptile. As he works on your back, you can actually feel the tension being scraped out of your muscles along with the dirt. It's a deep tissue massage delivered by a kitchen utensil. While you're getting scraped, you look around. This area is a hive of activity. Next to you, a very hairy man is grimacing as his slave tries to detangle the oil from his chest hair with the strigil. It looks painful. He yelps, and the slave mutters a quick apology before going right back to it. Then there's the sound. The collective noise of 50 metal blades scraping over 50 bodies creates a weird, rhythmic percussion. It sounds like a room full of people sharpening knives on leather straps. You notice something else too. The floor here is slick with the runoff. It's a mixture of oil, sweat, dead skin and sand, and it's absolutely foul if you think about it too hard. But the Romans don't seem to mind. To them, this is purification. You are physically removing the bad from your body. Suddenly, a loud argument breaks out a few benches down. "Watch where you flick that," a man shouts. Apparently, a strigil operator got a little too enthusiastic with his flicking motion and splattered a glob of someone else's grime onto a passerby's clean tunic. "My apologies, Dominus," the slave stammers, bowing low. The passerby looks ready to strike him, his face flushing red, but his friend pulls him away. "Leave it, Gaius. It's just dirt. Let's go get a drink." It's a tense moment that passes quickly, but it reminds you that violence is always just below the surface here. The social contract is fragile when everyone is hot, naked, and carrying metal tools. The slave working on you finishes with your back and moves to your legs. He's thorough. He scrapes down your calves, over your shins, ouch, and even gets the tops of your feet. You watch as the grey sludge piles up on the blade. It's horrifying to see just how dirty you actually were. The city of Rome sticks to you in layers, and seeing it peeled away is strangely hypnotic. There's a mainstream historical fact that fits here. The strigil wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol. Athletes were often depicted in statues holding them. It represented the ideal of the gymnasium lifestyle, training, cleaning, and caring for the body. It was so iconic that sarcophagi, stone coffins, were sometimes carved with strigils on them, basically saying, "Here lies a guy who went to the gym." As the scraping concludes, the slave grabs a rough linen towel and gives you a quick rub down to remove any lingering oiliness. Your skin feels raw, tingling, and incredibly light. The heavy, suffocating layer of grease is gone, and the air feels cool against your exposed pores. You run a hand over your arm. It's smoother than it has been in years. You feel brand new. But you're not clean yet. Not really. You've just removed the surface layer. Now you need to purge the toxins from the inside. You stand up, tossing the slave a coin for his trouble. He catches it mid-air without looking, already moving to the next customer. You grab your towel and head toward a heavy wooden door that seems to be radiating heat. This is the entrance to the Laconicum. Most people think of wooden baths as just pools of water, but the Laconicum is different. It's the dry heat room. Think of it as a Finnish sauna on steroids. It's usually a circular room with a conical roof, designed to trap heat at an intensity that would make a desert lizard uncomfortable. You push the door open. A blast of hot, dry air hits you in the face like you've just opened an oven to check on a roast. It instantly dries the moisture in your nose. You step inside and the door swings shut behind you with a heavy thud, sealing you in. The room is smaller than the others, more intimate. It's dimly lit, the only light coming from an oculus, a round opening in the ceiling. The air is still and scorching. In the center of the room there's a bronze brazier filled with glowing charcoal, radiating waves of heat that distort the air around it. You find a spot on a marble bench and sit. The stone is hot, almost too hot to touch. You have to lay your towel down first to avoid burning your backside. You sit there in the silence. It's quieter here. The heavy walls block out the noise of the palaestra. All you can hear is the soft crackle of the charcoal and the heavy breathing of the other men in the room. Within seconds, you start to sweat again. But this isn't the exercise sweat from before. This is a deep, profuse sweating. Your body is panicking, trying to cool itself down in an environment that refuses to cooperate. The sweat pours off you in rivulets. This is the point where historians argue about the purpose. Was this purely for health, to balance the humours, or was it a test of endurance? A way for Roman men to prove their toughness by sitting in an oven longer than their friends? Looking at the guy across from you, who is beet red and gasping for air but refusing to leave, you suspect it's a bit of both. You close your eyes and lean your head back against the wall. The heat feels like it's penetrating your bones. It's uncomfortable, bordering on unbearable, but there's a trance-like quality to it. Your heart hammers in your chest. You're purging, you're cooking, you're preparing for the water, but you can't stay here too long. You're not a loaf of bread. You feel dizzy, a sign that it's time to move. You stand up, your legs feeling a bit like jelly, and stumble toward the exit. You need air, you need steam, you need the Caldarium. You shove your shoulder against the heavy bronze door, your hand slipping slightly on the condensation-slicked metal handle. You are leaving the bone-dry, suffocating oven of the Laconicum and stepping into the belly of the beast. The transition isn't gentle, it's a thermal shockwave. As the door creaks open, you aren't just entering a room, you're walking into a cloud. A wall of white, thick humidity rolls over you, instantly soaking your towel and beading on your skin. If the Laconicum was a desert at high noon, the Caldarium, the hot room, is a tropical rainforest trapped inside a cathedral. The air is so heavy with moisture you can practically chew it. You take a breath, and it feels like you're inhaling warm soup. It fills your lungs, expanding them, loosening the tightness in your chest that the dry heat created. You step inside, and the door thuds shut behind you, sealing the steam in. For the first few seconds, you can't see a thing. The visibility is maybe 5 feet in front of your face. You are standing in a swirling white void. But as your eyes adjust to the diffuse light, the sheer, impossible scale of the space begins to reveal itself. This is the architectural climax of the entire complex. You are standing under a dome that rivals the Pantheon in size. It soars nearly 150 feet above your head. A man-made sky of concrete and brick, hidden behind the mist. Through the haze, you can make out the faint glint of glass mosaic tiles on the vaulted ceiling, golds, blues, and reds that shimmer whenever the steam shifts. Here is a mainstream historical fact that is hard to wrap your head around. The dome of the Caldarium in the Baths of Caracalla was roughly 115 feet, 35 meters in diameter. To build a dome that wide without steel reinforcement is an engineering miracle. The Romans used a concrete mixture with lightweight volcanic rock, pumice, in the aggregate for the upper sections to reduce the weight, essentially inventing a high-tech composite material 2,000 years before modern aerospace engineering. You tread carefully, the floor beneath your feet is hot. Not warm, hot. Remember those sandals you left back in the locker room? You might be regretting that decision right now. The floor is heated from below by the hypocaust system, which we'll get to later, and our marble tiles can reach temperatures that will blister bare feet if you stand still for too long. This brings us to a quirky little historical detail. Experienced bathers often brought special footwear for this specific room. They were called baxae, simple wooden clogs or sandals with thick soles made of bark or papyrus. If you look down through the swirling mist, you can see the seasoned regulars clacking around in these wooden shoes, looking like they're wearing ancient Crocs, while the novices, like you, are doing a sort of frantic tiptoe dance to keep their soles from roasting. You move deeper into the room, navigating by sound as much as sight. The acoustics here are bizarre. The steam dampens the high frequencies, muffling the sharpness of voices, but the dome amplifies the bass. The result is a low, rolling murmur that sounds like a distant thunderstorm. You hear the splash of water, the heavy sighs of men relaxing, and the occasional slap of flesh as someone gets a massage in the corner. The light in here is magical. It's late afternoon and the sun is streaming through the massive south-facing windows. But because of the steam, the light doesn't hit the floor in sharp beams. It diffuses into glowing shafts of gold that cut through the white air. It's cinematic. It feels like you've stepped into a dream sequence or a very high-budget perfume commercial. As you walk, you have to be careful not to slip. The humidity condenses on everything. The marble walls are weeping water. The floor is a slick sheet of wet stone. You reach out to steady yourself against a pillar, and it's hot to the touch and slick with water. The entire building feels like it's sweating along with you. You pause near the center of the room, just breathing it in. This is the heart of the Roman social life. In the obscurity of the steam, privacy is strangely preserved. You can be standing 3 feet from a senator and not know it until he speaks. It's a place where secrets are exchanged in low whispers, hidden by the hiss of the steam vents. There is a scholarly debate that fits perfectly with this steamy atmosphere. The glass house theory. For a long time, historians argued about how the Romans managed to keep this room hot while having such massive windows. If they were open, these arches, all the steam would escape and the heat would vanish. If they were shuttered, it would be pitch black. Recent archaeology confirms that these massive windows were indeed glazed, with glass or thin sheets of translucent mica. But the debate continues regarding the quality of that glass. Was it clear enough to see the gardens outside, creating an indoor-outdoor infinity pool vibe? Or was it milky and opaque, merely letting in light while obscuring the view? Given the technology of the time, it was likely the latter, a glowing wall of light rather than a clear pane. But imagining a clear view of the Roman sunset while sitting in a steam bath is a nice thought, isn't it? You feel a droplet of water fall from the ceiling and land on your shoulder. It's hot. This is a common hazard in the Caldarium, the indoor rain. As the steam rises, it hits the cooler upper reaches of the dome, condenses and falls back down. To combat this, Roman architects sometimes built the ceilings with subtle grooves to channel the condensation down the walls rather than letting it drip on the bathers. But in a room this big, you're bound to get rained on eventually. The heat is starting to get to you again. But unlike the dry, prickly heat of the Laconicum, this is a heavy, lethargic heat. It makes your limbs feel like they weigh 1,000 pounds. It softens you. The oil and dirt have been scraped off, and now your pores are being blasted open by the steam, releasing whatever toxins were left deep down. You wipe the moisture from your face, but it's pointless. You're wet. Everyone is wet. The distinction between sweat and steam has vanished. You are just a water-based life form existing in a water-based environment. Through the mist, you see the shapes of the pools. Large, inviting basins of hot water sunk into the floor, lining the edges of the room. This is the destination. The walk through the steam was just the preamble. You need to get off this burning floor and into the suspension of the water. You navigate toward the nearest pool, the Alveus. It's a rectangular tank large enough to hold dozens of men. You can see heads bobbing in the water, looking like floating cabbages in the mist. The water is dark, reflecting the shadows of the room, and steam rises off its surface to join the cloud above. You reach the edge of the pool. The marble rim is curved and smooth, worn down by centuries of backside sliding over it. You sit on the edge for a moment, letting your feet dangle in the water. It is hot, not scalding, but hot enough to make you hiss through your teeth. It's the kind of heat that warns you to take it slow. You look back into the center of the room one last time. The sun is dipping lower, and the shafts of light are turning a deep burnt orange, setting the steam on fire. It's an apocalyptic kind of beauty. You're a tiny speck in a cathedral of water vapour, surrounded by the greatest empire the world has ever seen, about to take a bath. You grip the edge of the pool, the steam swirls around you, wrapping you in a white embrace. The burning floor is behind you, the water waits, it's time to sink. You stand at the edge of the alveus, the hot pool, looking down into the steaming water. It's dark, rippling slightly from the movement of other bodies, and it smells of wet stone and dissolved minerals. You take a breath, holding the humid air in your lungs, and commit. You slide one foot in. The heat hits you like a physical blow. It's not the sharp scald of a kettle, but a deep enveloping intensity that instantly makes the nerve endings in your toes scream a warning. This water is kept at a temperature that hovers right on the border between luxurious relaxation and poaching a salmon. You pause, letting your body acclimate, gripping the marble rim until your knuckles turn white. You can feel the eyes of the regulars on you, those seasoned old men who look like leather handbags left in the sun too long, judging your hesitation. You grit your teeth and sink lower. The water rises past your knees, your thighs, your waist. The sensation is bizarre. The heavy layer of sweat and condensed steam on your skin dissolves into the water, creating a slick barrier that makes you feel like you're sliding rather than submerging. Finally, with a soft exhale that sounds suspiciously like a whimper, you lower yourself all the way in. The water closes over your chest, stopping just below your chin. For a moment, you can't breathe. The heat presses in on your diaphragm, squeezing the air out. Your heart rate spikes, hammering against your ribs as your body tries to figure out why you voluntarily climbed into a cauldron. But then, the magic happens. The panic fades, replaced by a sudden, overwhelming wave of relaxation. The tension in your shoulders, the stiffness in your legs from the walk, the soreness from the palestra, it all just melts. You're a pat of butter on a hot pancake. You shuffle awkwardly along the submerged marble step that runs the perimeter of the pool. This is the seating area. You find a spot between a man who looks like he's asleep and another who is staring intently at the ceiling, and you sit. The water buoyancy takes the weight off your spine. You're floating in luxury. Now that you're settled, you can really look at the water you're sitting in. Here's a reality check that might ruin your bath. This water is not the crystal clear chlorinated blue you're used to at the Holiday Inn. It's thick. The surface is covered in a faint shimmering slick of olive oil that has washed off the bodies of the 100 men before you. It's a bit murky, a sort of grey-green soup of dissolved minerals, sweat, and the remnants of the scraping process. This leads us to a fierce area of academic contention, the hygiene of Roman baths. Historians still argue whether these places were pinnacles of public health or massive, festering petri dishes. On one hand, the Romans were obsessed with flowing water, and the tanks were constantly flushed. On the other hand, there's no chlorine, no filtration system for bacteria, and you're sitting in a warm broth with half the neighbourhood. A famous Roman doctor, Celsus, actually advised people not to go to the baths if they had fresh wounds, because they knew gangrene loved a good soak. So try not to drink the water. Seriously, keep your mouth shut. Despite the human soup factor, the engineering required to keep you this toasty is mind-blowing. If you look toward the curved end of the pool, you might spot a bronze opening near the bottom, where the heat seems most intense. This is the testudo, or tortoise. It's a mainstream historical fact that is pure genius. The testudo was a semi-cylindrical metal container shaped like a tortoise shell that was open at the bottom to the fire below and open at the sides to the pool. The cool water from the pool would flow into the container, get superheated by the fire directly underneath, and then shoot back out into the pool by convection. It's a natural pump-free water heater that kept thousands of gallons at a steady 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. It's basically a tea kettle built into the wall. You lean back against the side of the pool. The marble is warm against your neck. You close your eyes. The sound of the room shifts when your ears are this close to the water surface. The splashes sound louder, sharper. The drone of conversation becomes a vibrating hum that travels through the water and into your bones. You are currently participating in the ultimate Roman leisure activity. This right here, this moment of doing absolutely nothing is what the empire was built for. All those legions marching in the rain in Britain, All those tax collectors in Egypt, all those engineers building roads in Gaul. They did it so you could sit in hot water in Rome and forget about your problems. It's the ancient equivalent of working for the weekend, except the weekend is every afternoon, and the bathtub is the size of a basketball court. To your left, the sleeping man snorts awake, creating a small tidal wave that laps against your chin. He looks around, confused, then grunts and settles back down. "Good heat today," he mumbles. "More to the universe than to you." "Yeah," you reply. "Good heat." It's the universal small talk of the spa. While you soak, you notice a slave moving along the edge of the pool with a net on a long pole. He's fishing out debris. You decide not to look too closely at what he's catching. It's probably just leaves or a lost piece of sponge, but given the lack of swim diapers in ancient Rome, ignorance is definitely bliss. There's a quirky fringe tidbit about the luxury of these pools. We have evidence that some wealthy Romans were so addicted to the comfort that they brought water-resistant cushions to sit on in the pool. Imagine that. The marble wasn't soft enough for their delicate patrician backsides, so they had slave submerged silk or leather pillows for them to perch on. You shift your weight on the hard stone step and think, you know what, they might have been on something. The heat is starting to penetrate deep. You can feel your pulse in your fingertips. The lobster effect is kicking in. Your skin is turning a bright, healthy pink. This is the hypothermia therapy. The Romans believed the heat cooked out the peccant humours, the bad fluids, and balanced the body. You just feel like you're about to fall asleep and drown, which is arguably a form of balancing. You look up through the rising steam. From this low angle, the dome looks even higher. The mist swirls around the gilded coffers of the ceiling, catching the light. It's hypnotic. You watch a droplet of water form on a mosaic tile 100 feet up, grow heavy, and then fall. You track it all the way down until it hits the water surface 5 feet away with a distinct plip. It's easy to lose track of time here. There are no clocks on the walls, no announcements. The only measure of time is the wrinkling of your fingers. You look at your hands. They are pruning up nicely. You've reached maximum saturation. You are now as clean as a Roman gets. You've been oiled, scraped, baked and boiled. The dirt of the city is gone, replaced by a film of mineral water and a deep lethargic heat. But the ritual isn't over. You can't just walk out into the street like this. You'd catch a chill and die, or at least that's what the Roman mothers tell their sons. You need to cool down, you need to transition. But for just one more minute, you stay. You let the water support you. You listen to the distant echo of a political argument bouncing off the walls. You feel the ghost of the fire from the testudo warming your feet. You are suspended in the womb of the empire, floating in the very blood of Rome. It's water. Eventually the heat becomes too much. The throbbing in your head signals that you've cooked long enough. You need air. You need to stand up. You plant your hands on the rim of the pool. Your body feels incredibly heavy as you push yourself up, gravity reclaiming its hold on you as you emerge from the water. Water cascades off your skin, splashing back into the alveus. You step out onto the warm floor, dripping wet, steaming like a fresh loaf of bread, and wobble slightly on your rubbery legs. You grab your towel, it's damp from the humidity, essentially a warm, wet rag, and wrap it around your waist. It offers zero warmth, but at least it covers your dignity. You turn your back on the hot pool. The air in the room is still stifling, but now you have a new focus. You need to hear what's being said. You've been in your own head for too long. The acoustics of the dome are calling you. It's time to eavesdrop on the masters of the world. You're standing on the warm, wet marble of the Caldarium floor, your towel clinging to you like a second, less effective skin. You've escaped the boiling water of the alveus, but you haven't escaped the room. And now that your body isn't screaming about the heat, your other senses are starting to wake up, specifically your ears. The visual fog of the steam is thick, but the auditory landscape is crystal clear and terrifyingly chaotic. You're standing inside one of the world's largest echo chambers. The dome above you, that massive masterpiece of Roman engineering, acts like a giant parabolic reflector. It takes the sound of a splash from the pool, a slap on a massage table, and a whispered secret from the corner, mixes them all together, and bounces them around the room in a disorienting sonic swirl. You wander toward a stone bench set into a niche in the wall, trying to find a place to catch your breath. As you sit, you realize something strange. The background roar of the room, the white noise of water and steam, fades slightly in this specific spot, and suddenly You can hear a conversation happening 40 feet away as if the speakers were whispering directly into your ear. It's an acoustic anomaly, a whispering gallery effect created by the curved architecture. The physics of the dome captures sound waves and runs them along the curvature of the ceiling, depositing them perfectly at the focal point where you happen to be sitting. You have accidentally tapped into the Roman internet. Two men are standing near a pillar, obscured by a drift of white mist. You can't see their faces clearly, just the outline of their bodies. One is large, expansive, gesturing with a towel. The other is smaller, hunched, nodding vigorously. The grain shipment from Alexandria was delayed again, the large man grumbles. His voice is deep, resonant. The prefect is blaming the winds, but I hear he's selling off the surplus on the black market in Ostia. Scandalous, Senator, the smaller man squeaks. Truly scandalous. Shall I draft a letter? No, you fool, letters leave a trail. We speak to the aedile directly. You are witnessing the clientela system in action. This is a mainstream historical fact that defines Roman society, the patron-client relationship. Every powerful man, the patron, had a web of dependents, clients, who did his dirty work, voted for him, and boosted his ego in exchange for legal protection and the occasional handout. Usually this business is conducted in the morning during the formal salutatio, but the baths are where the real work happens. This is the golf course of the ancient world. Deals that shift the economy of the Mediterranean are being cut right now by naked men sweating in a steam room. But then the conversation shifts, the tone drops. You have to lean your head back against the cold stone of the niche to catch it. And the little hood, the smaller man whispers. He doesn't use a name, he uses a nickname. Little hood refers to the Caracallus, the Gallic tunic the emperor likes to wear. It's a code. Don't, the senator snaps, his voice low but sharp. The walls have ears, Titus. They say he's seeing ghosts, Titus whispers anyway, unable to help himself. They say he screams at night, that he sees his brother coming out of the shadows with a sword. A chill that has nothing to do with the temperature runs down your spine. They are talking about Gaeta, Emperor Caracalla's younger brother, the one Caracalla murdered, or had murdered, just a few years ago, and not just murdered, he erased him. This is the concept of damnatio memoriae. Caracalla ordered that Gaeta's name be chiselled off every monument, his face scraped off every coin, his statues smashed. To speak of him is dangerous, to mourn him is a death sentence. And yet, here in the fog, the ghost of the brother lingers. He is purging the Senate again, the senator murmurs, sounding tired. 3 more names on the prescription list this morning. We just need to keep our heads down, bathe, eat, and applaud when required. You shrink back into the shadows of your niche. This is the danger of the baths. You aren't just here to clean your pores, you are swimming in a shark tank of political intrigue. This brings up a fascinating, quirky fringe tidbit. The Roman Empire was infested with delatores, professional informers. These weren't just concerned citizens, they were career snitches who got a cut of the confiscated property of anyone they successfully accused of treason. The baths were their hunting grounds. A loose lip in the Caldarium, a joke about the emperor's bald spot in the latrine, that could be enough to have your estate seized and your head removed. You suddenly wonder if the guy pretending to sleep on the bench next to you is actually memorizing that senator's voice. You look around the room, trying to spot the spies through the mist. It's impossible. Everyone looks the same when they're naked and wet. That's the paradox. Historians still argue whether the baths acted as a safety valve for democracy or a tool of imperial control. On one hand, it was the great equalizer, the one place where the poor could rub shoulders literally with the rich. It gave the illusion that everyone was part of the same Rome. On the other hand, many scholars argue that it was a calculated distraction, a golden cage of pleasure built by tyrants like Caracalla to keep the populace docile, clean, and too relaxed to riot. Listening to the fear in the senator's voice, you're leaning toward the imperial control theory. The conversation at the whispering gallery fades as a group of boisterous young men splashes into the nearby pool, their laughter drowning out the treasonous gossip. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. The acoustics here really are a marvel, though. Above the chatter, you hear a strange melodic sound. Someone is singing. It's a faint, haunting tune, bouncing off the gold mosaic tiles of the dome high above. It sounds almost religious, or maybe just a drunk man with a really nice tenor voice. It adds a surreal layer to the atmosphere. Beauty and terror, music and murder all floating in the same cloud of steam. You decide to move. The stone bench is getting uncomfortable, and you've heard enough to get you executed. You stand up, your wooden sandals, if you were lucky enough to rent them, clacking on the floor. As you walk across the vast expanse of the Caldarium, you become acutely aware of the floor beneath you again. It's not just warm, it's alive with heat. You can feel the vibrations of something massive working underneath. Have you ever stopped to think about how this is possible? You are standing in a building the size of a cathedral, kept at a steady tropical temperature in an age before electricity, gas, or pumps. The sheer energy required to keep this room full of steam, to keep those millions of gallons of water hot, to keep this marble floor from freezing, it's astronomical. You look at a vent near the floor where hot air is pumping into the room. It smells faintly of wood smoke. That smell is the only clue to the dark reality that exists just a few feet below your toes. While you float in luxury, an army is working in hell. The magic of the Caldarium isn't magic at all, it's a machine. A hungry, roaring, wood-eating machine that lives in the basement. And as you prepare to leave the suffocating heat of the hot room, you can't help but think about the fire that feeds it. You're walking on top of a volcano, and someone down there is shoveling coal. You tighten your towel. The steam is starting to feel oppressive now. The novelty of the gossip has worn off, and the heat is making your head spin. It's time to understand the source of the power. It's time to look down. You're still standing in the Caldarium, but your focus has shifted. You're no longer looking up at the majestic mist-filled dome. You're looking down. You wiggle your toes against the marble mosaic floor. It's warm, comfortably, consistently warm, like a stone that's been baking in the sun all day. But there is no sun down here. You're standing on top of a machine. To understand the Baths of Caracalla, you have to understand that what you see, the marble, the statues, the splashing water, is just the skin. The skeleton and the organs are hidden beneath your feet. You're walking on a false floor, a suspended surface known as the suspensura. If you could peel back these mosaic tiles, you wouldn't find solid earth. You would find a void. This is the hypocaust, arguably the most brilliant and diabolical invention of Roman engineering. Here is the mainstream historical fact that powers this entire experience. The floor you are standing on is resting on pillars of stacked tiles called pili. These stacks are about 2 feet high, creating a crawl space underneath the entire room. Hot air and smoke from massive wood-fired furnaces are pumped into this hollow space, circulating around the pillars and heating the floor from below before rising up through hollow clay tubes in the walls, called tubuli, to exit out the roof. You're essentially standing inside a chimney, but the smoke is trapped in the walls, radiating heat inward without choking you. It's radiant floor heating, the same luxury feature you might find in a high-end modern bathroom, except this version requires an industrial-scale inferno to operate. You walk over to one of the walls and place your hand against it. It's warm, too. You can feel the ghost of the smoke rushing up through the bricks behind the plaster. It's a complete thermal envelope. But as you stand there enjoying the warmth that penetrates your aching joints, take a second to think about how that heat gets there. Deep below you, in a network of service tunnels that mirror the layout of the baths above, is a scene from the underworld. While you're up here discussing politics and scrubbing your paws, hundreds of slaves are down there in the dark. They are the fornicarii, the furnace workers. Their reality is the inverse of yours. You have light, they have darkness. You have water, they have fire. You have leisure, they have unremitting, back-breaking labour. Imagine the service corridors. They are wide enough for carts, lined with brick and choked with dust. The heat down there is not the relaxing, humid warmth of the Caldarium. It is a dry, searing, dangerous heat. The furnaces, the praefurnia, are roaring beasts that need to be fed constantly. This brings us to a staggering logistical reality, a quirky tidbit about the sheer consumption of this place. The Baths of Caracalla didn't just use a few logs, they devoured forests. It's estimated that the baths consume 10 tons of wood every single day. Let that sink in. 10 tons. That's entire groves of trees being felled, chopped, carted into the city, and shoved into the ovens every 24 hours. The smoke from the baths would have been a permanent smudge on the Roman skyline, a signal fire of excessive consumption. Down in the tunnels, the air is thick with soot and carbon monoxide. The slaves are covered in ash, their eyes stinging, their lungs coating with black dust. They are shoveling fuel into the maw of the furnaces, raking out the clinkers, and adjusting the dampers to ensure the temperature up here doesn't drop by even a degree. There is a grim, scholarly debate surrounding these workers. Historians still argue about the status and lifespan of the Fornicariae. Were they considered skilled technicians, valuable assets who knew exactly how to regulate the complex airflow of the hypocaust? Or were they the lowest of the low, disposable labour sent to the tunnels as a punishment, essentially worked to death in the toxic fume? Some evidence suggests the latter. Roman literature often references the mines and the mills as punishments, and the service tunnels of the baths likely fell into that category. Working down there meant living a short life. The heat exhaustion alone would be lethal, not to mention the constant inhalation of smoke. It's a sobering thought. The luxury of your Roman spa day is directly purchased with the lungs of the men beneath the floor. You feel a subtle vibration in the soles of your feet. It might be a heavy cart rumbling through the service tunnels below, delivering another load of olive wood. Or maybe it's the slamming of an iron furnace door. It connects you to them. You are literally walking on their ceiling. The hypocaust isn't just under the Caldarium, though. It extends under the Tepidarium, the warm room, and the Sudatorium, the sweating room. It's a massive interconnected vascular system of heat, and the slaves have to navigate it all. Think about the maintenance. Sometimes a tile in the suspensura cracks. Sometimes a soot blockage occurs in the wall flues. Who fixes that? A slave has to crawl into that 2-foot-high space between the pillars, surrounded by suffocating heat and darkness, to make repairs. It's claustrophobia-inducing just to think about it. You look around the Caldarium with fresh eyes. The marble statues of gods and heroes suddenly look a bit cynical. They stand serene and beautiful, illuminated by the sun, while the ground beneath them hides a literal hellscape. It's the perfect metaphor for the Roman Empire itself, a glittering golden surface built on a foundation of blood and slavery. "Hey, you okay?" A man bumps into you, snapping you out of your reverie. He's holding a strigil and looks concerned. You realise you've been staring at the floor for a solid 2 minutes like a weirdo. "Fine," you mutter. "Just thinking about the plumbing." He laughs, a booming sound that echoes in the dome. "Don't think, citizen. Just sweat. That's what we're here for." He's right in a way. You can't fix the Roman economy or abolish slavery from inside the steam room in 216 AD. You're just a tourist in time. But now the heat of the floor feels a little different. It feels earned. It feels expensive. The air in the Caldarium is getting heavy. The humidity is starting to feel less like a hug and more like a stranglehold. You've reached your limit. Your heart is pounding a little too fast, a sign that your core temperature has risen significantly. The Romans called this overheating the blood, and while their medical science was questionable, the symptom is real. You need to cool down. But you can't just jump into an ice bath. That would stop your heart. You need to step down gradually. You need the transition zone. You look toward the massive archway that leads back toward the centre of the complex. The steam thins out in that direction. The air looks clearer, cooler. That is the Tepidarium. You adjust your towel, which is now completely soaked and heavy. You take one last look at the hazy, golden light of the hot room, acknowledging the invisible fires burning beneath your feet, and begin the long walk across the heated floor toward the exit. The clack of your sandals, or the slap of your bare feet, marks your departure from the peak of the heat. You are moving from the fire to the warmth. The intensity is about to dial back, but the luxury is just getting started. You push through the heavy bronze doors, leaving the suffocating white cloud of the Caldarium behind you. As the doors seal shut with a dull thud, the world suddenly snaps back into focus. Welcome to the Tepidarium. If the hot room was a dream state, hazy, indistinct and overwhelming, this is high-definition reality. You are standing in the architectural centrepiece of the entire complex, the grand central hall around which the whole bathhouse revolves. And the first thing you notice is the air. It's warm, but it's not wet. The humidity has dropped drastically. The temperature is a pleasant, dry warmth, likely around 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius. It feels like a balmy spring evening compared to the jungle you just left. Your lungs expand, grateful for the oxygen that isn't 90% water vapor. You take a deep breath, and for the first time in an hour, your vision is perfectly clear. And what a view it is. Because the Tepidarium doesn't have to deal with the destructive moisture of the steam room, the architects went absolutely wild with the decoration. This is the flex room. This is where Caracalla put the budget. You are standing in a hall that is essentially a cathedral of leisure. The ceiling soars overhead, a massive groin-vaulted roof, a cross vault, that distributes the weight onto 4 gargantuan piers. This design allows for high clerestory windows that flood the space with golden afternoon light. Here is a mainstream historical fact that will make you look at old train stations differently. The central hall of the Baths of Caracalla was the direct inspiration for the original Pennsylvania station in New York City and Union Station in Chicago. The architects of the early 20th century looked at this room and said, yes, that is what a grand entrance should look like. When you look at old photos of Penn Station, you're looking at a modern replica of where you're standing right now. The scale is designed to make humans feel insignificant, and it's working. You wander toward the center of the room. The floor is a masterpiece of opus sectile, cut marble work. Unlike the mosaics, which use tiny cubes, these are large geometric slabs of precious stone fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle. You're walking on purple porphyry from Egypt, green serpentine from Sparta, and yellow giallo antico from Numidia. It's a geological map of Roman conquest beneath your feet. You find a marble bench, intricately carved with lion's feet, and sit down. This is the purpose of the Tepidarium transition. If you went straight from the boiling Caldarium to the freezing Frigidarium, your body would go into shock. You might faint, have a heart attack, or at the very least cramp up and drown. The Tepidarium is the biological airlock. It allows your core temperature to drift down slowly. It closes your pores gently, it prepares you for the plunge. But while you sit there, waiting for your heart rate to normalize, you realize this room serves another purpose. It's the social runway. Because there's no steam to obscure your face or your body, this is where people come to be seen. You watch a senator stroll by, flanked by his entourage. He's not rushing, he's promenading. He stops to admire a statue, making sure everyone sees him admiring it. Speaking of statues, you are sharing the room with a celebrity. Looming in one of the massive archways is the Farnese Hercules. This isn't just a statue, it's a mountain of marble. It depicts the hero Hercules leaning heavily on his club, looking absolutely exhausted. He's weary, his muscles are bulging, but his posture screams, I am so done with these 12 labours. It's a quirky fringe tidbit that this specific statue was found here. It fits the vibe perfectly. The Romans loved the idea that even a demigod needs a break. You look at Hercules, tired and naked, and he looks back at you, tired and naked. It's a moment of cross-mythological bonding. Interestingly, if you walk behind the statue, which you can, because it's freestanding, you'll see he's holding the apples of the Hesperides behind his back. He's hiding his prize. It's a detail most people miss because they're too busy staring at his abs. While you admire the art, a slave approaches you. He's holding a small alabaster jar and a soft linen cloth. Anointing, Dominus, he asks. This brings us to an open scholarly debate, the function of the Tepidarium regarding oil. Historians still argue whether the Tepidarium was primarily a passive waiting room or an active treatment room for oiling and massage. Some argue that oiling happened before the bath in the Epideicterium or Districtarium, while others believe the Tepidarium was where the luxury oiling happened, the perfumed stuff you put on after the dirt is gone. Given the smell in the air, a heady mix of saffron, cinnamon and rose, you're inclined to believe the luxury oiling theory. The air here doesn't smell like sweat, it smells like money. You nod to the slave. Why not? You've survived the heat, you deserve to smell like a flower. He pours a small amount of oil onto his hands. It's high-quality stuff, not the thick sludge from the exercise yard. He rubs it into your shoulders and arms. It's not a cleaning scrub this time, it's a moisturizer. The oil seals your skin, creating a barrier against the cold water that awaits you. As you sit there, getting pampered under a ceiling that costs more than a small city, you listen to the acoustics of this room. It's different from the Caldarium. The echo is sharper, less muddy. You can hear the click of sandals, the rustle of towels, and the clear, distinct laughter of a group of women entering from the other side. Wait, women? Yes. In the Tepidarium, the paths often converge. Whether the baths are mixed sex or segregated by time is debated, but this central hall is the crossroads. You see a wealthy matron, her hair piled high in an intricate style that must have taken hours, and somehow survived the steam, likely because she skipped the Caldarium, walking with her daughters. The men in the room subtly suck in their guts and puff out their chests. It's the eternal dance of human vanity, played out against a backdrop of imperial grandeur. You notice something else about the people here. They look sleepy. The tepidarium has a soporific effect. The gentle warmth, the lack of intense stimuli, the post-sweat crash. It all combines to make you want to curl up on the marble bench and take a nap. You see several men doing just that, snoring softly in the corners. But you can't sleep. You have a schedule to keep. And more importantly, you're starting to feel too warm again. Not the suffocating heat of the steam room, but a stagnant internal heat. Your body has acclimated and now it's craving the opposite. You look toward the massive archway at the north end of the hall. Unlike the enclosed doors of the hot rooms, this archway is open, leading into a vast shadowy cavern. Even from here, 50 feet away, you can feel a cool draft drifting out of it. It's a refreshing, crisp breeze that tickles the hair on your arms. That is the Frigidarium, the cold room. The transition is almost complete. You have gone from the dirty, dusty street to the sweaty locker room to the burning sun of the exercise yard, to the suffocating steam of the hot room, and now you have stabilized in the warm center. You are clean, you're oiled, you're relaxed. But the Roman bath isn't about staying comfortable. It's about invigoration. It's about the shock to the system that makes you feel alive. You dismiss the slave with a wave and a small coin. You stand up, your limbs feeling loose and fluid. The oil on your skin glistens in the shafts of sunlight cutting through the high windows. You take one last look at weary Hercules. "Hang in there, big guy," you whisper. You turn your back on the warmth. The cool air from the north archway beckons you. It promises to snap your eyes open and freeze your pores shut. It's the finale of the hydrotherapy circuit. You tighten your towel, take a deep breath to brace yourself, and step toward the chill. You cross the threshold from the gentle warmth of the tepidarium and walk into a cathedral of ice. Welcome to the Frigidarium. If the Caldarium was the heart of the complex, this is the lungs. It is vast, airy, and spectacularly cool. The change in temperature is immediate. The air here isn't just room temperature. It's being actively cooled by the massive shade of the vaulted ceiling and the constant flow of fresh aqueduct water. It hits your oiled skin like a physical breeze, sending a delightful shiver down your spine that wakes you up instantly. You're standing in the largest room of the entire bathhouse. The scale here is frankly ridiculous. The ceiling soars so high above you that the pigeons roosting in the rafters look like specks of dust. You are dwarfed by 8 colossal grey granite columns, each one a single block of stone that hold up the roof. Here is a mainstream historical fact that connects this ancient room to the modern world. These columns were too beautiful to leave behind. Centuries later, during the Renaissance, the Medici family, specifically Cosimo I, had one of these massive columns hauled all the way from these ruins to Florence. It stands today in the Piazza Santa Trinita as the Column of Justice. So, if you've ever been to Florence and taken a selfie next to that tall pillar with the statue on top, you are standing next to a piece of the room you're in right now. You walk across the floor, your footsteps echoing sharply. The acoustic profile here is brittle and bright. In the steam room, sounds were muffled. Here they are crisp. You hear the sharp splash of water, the gasp of men hitting the cold, and the chatter of people playing board games in the corners. The room is darker than the others. The windows are smaller to keep out the sun, creating a perpetual twilight that feels cool and cave-like. It's a relief for your eyes after the glare of the exercise yard. But you aren't here to admire the architecture. You're here for the final shock. Arranged in the corners of this massive hall are the cold plunge pools. These aren't the murky soup-like baths of the hot room. The water here is crystal clear, constantly cycling in from the Aqua Antoniniana. It comes from the hills, and it carries the chill of the mountains with it. You approach the edge of the nearest basin. The water is a deep, inviting blue, tiled with mosaics that make it look like a shimmering lagoon. You stand on the rim. The heat of the Caldarium is still lingering in your core, a dull furnace in your chest, but your skin is cooling rapidly. You have 2 choices, ease in like a coward or commit. In Rome, we commit. You take a breath, hold it, and jump. Splash! The shock is absolute. It's a violent electric jolt that hits every inch of your skin simultaneously. The air is punched out of your lungs in a sharp, involuntary gasp. Ha! That echoes off the vaulted ceiling. For a second, your brain freezes. The temperature difference is maybe 40 degrees, and your body reacts by slamming every pore on your body shut. It's the biological equivalent of slamming the doors and windows during a storm. The blood rushes from your skin to your core to protect your organs, and your heart hammers a frantic rhythm against your ribs. But then the euphoria hits. As you surface, pushing your wet hair back from your face, you feel incredible. The lethargy of the hot room is gone, replaced by a razor-sharp alertness. You feel tight, solid, and invincible. This is the contrast hydrotherapy that modern athletes pay thousands of dollars for, and you're getting it for the price of a copper coin. You tread water, letting the chill penetrate. The water feels harder than the hot pool, crisper. You look around at the other men in the pool. Gone are the sleepy, drugged expressions of the tepidarium. Everyone here looks wide awake. They are laughing, splashing, their eyes bright. "Cold today," a man yells, surfacing next to you with a grin. "Fresh from the aqueduct," you yell back, your voice sounding loud and energetic. You swim a few strokes. It's not a big pool, just enough to submerge and move around. The oil you applied earlier does its job. You can feel the water beading off your skin rather than soaking in. It keeps you from freezing to death, acting as a thin wetsuit. Now, here is a quirky fringe tidbit about the water supply. The Romans were obsessed with water quality. We know from archaeological finds that they had complex filtration systems, settling tanks called piscina limaria, at the start of the aqueducts to catch mud and debris. But even more impressive, the water for the cold baths was often kept separate from the water used for the boilers. They knew that once water had been heated and sat in a tank, it lost its sparkle or freshness and gained bacteria. So they reserved the freshest, coldest, most aerated water specifically for the Frigidarium plunge. You're swimming in the Roman equivalent of Evian. Historians still argue whether the roof of the Frigidarium was fully closed or had an open oculus like the Pantheon. Most reconstructions show it closed with groin vaults to keep the sun out and the cool air in, but some scholars suggest there might have been ventilation openings to allow the heat rising from the connecting rooms to escape. Looking up at the dark, cool shadows of the ceiling, you're glad it's closed. The last thing you want right now is a sunbeam. You stay in the water for only a few minutes. The goal isn't to get hypothermia, it's to close the circuit. Once your teeth start to chatter, it's time to get out. You haul yourself up the marble steps. Gravity feels different now. You don't feel heavy and sluggish like you did leaving the hot pool. You feel light, almost bouncy. The cold water has tightened your muscles and fired up your nervous system. You grab your towel and rub yourself down vigorously. The friction warms your skin, creating a glowing sensation. This is the Roman glow. You're clean, you're cooled, and you're vibrating with energy. But you're not done. You can't go back out into the street dripping wet. And besides, you haven't enriched your mind yet. You're physically clean, but are you intellectually clean? You look past the massive granite columns toward the outer edges of the hall. Beyond the pools leading out into the garden precinct are the spaces for the mind, the libraries, the walking paths. The final stage of the afternoon isn't about the body, it's about the soul. You wrap your towel around your waist, it feels drier now against your cool skin, and step away from the splash zone. The roar of the water fades behind you as you head toward the sunlight of the gardens. You step out of the shadowed coolness of the Frigidarium and back into the embrace of the late afternoon sun. The transition is gentle this time. You aren't being blasted by heat, you're being warmed. Your skin, still cool and tight from the plunge, tingles pleasantly as the sunlight hits it. You're wrapped in your towel, wandering the perimeter of the great complex, and you feel a profound sense of lightness. The heavy, sweaty burden of the city has been washed away, scraped off, and frozen out. You are now entering the final phase of the Roman bath ritual, otium. This is the Latin concept of leisure time, but not just doing nothing. It implies time spent on self-improvement, contemplation, and the enjoyment of the finer things in life. You've taken care of the body, now you must tend to the mind. You walk toward the massive perimeter walls that enclose the garden precinct. These aren't just walls, they are complex structures housing shops, offices, and most importantly the libraries. You approach one of the great exurgerae, a semicircular recess built into the wall. It's huge, shadowed, and quiet. You step inside, the noise of the fountains and the splashing pools fading away behind you. You are now in the bibliotheca. Here is a mainstream historical fact that illustrates the Roman commitment to culture. The Baths of Caracalla contain two distinct libraries, one for Greek texts and one for Latin texts. This bifurcation was standard in the Roman world. If you were an educated Roman, you were bilingual. You read Virgil for your patriotism and Homer for your culture. The room you've walked into is lined with wooden shelving units called armaria, the ancestor of the armoire, filled not with books as we know them, but with thousands of scrolls. The smell here is incredible. It's a mix of cedar wood used to build the shelves and repel insects, old papyrus, and the faint, sharp scent of citrus oil used to preserve the parchment. It's the smell of knowledge. You wander along the shelves. You can't just pull a book off a shelf and flip through it. Reading a scroll or volumen is a physical activity. You have to hold the roll with both hands, unrolling with the right and rolling up with the left, revealing the text in columns. It takes effort. It's not something you do while eating a sandwich. You spot a man sitting on a bench, a slave standing next to him reading aloud from a scroll. The man's eyes are closed, his head tipped back, listening to a treatise on Stoicism. This was common. Reading was often an auditory experience, a performance. But as you look around at the sparse crowd in this massive hall, you encounter a cynical question that historians still argue whether applies here. Were these libraries actually centres of learning, or were they just elaborate set dressing? Some scholars suggest that the libraries in the imperial baths were the ancient equivalent of coffee table books, there to make the emperor look cultured and benevolent, but rarely used for serious study. After all, parchment is sensitive to humidity, and putting a library next to a giant steam engine seems like a preservation nightmare. Yet others argue that for the poor of Rome, this was their only access to literature. Regardless of whether anyone is actually studying, the vibe is undeniable. It's a sanctuary. You lean against a cool marble column and just breathe. The dust motes dance in the shafts of light coming from the high windows. It's peaceful. You leave the library and head back out into the gardens, or the xystus. This is the parkland that fills the space between the bathhouse and the outer walls. The landscaping is manicured to within an inch of its life. Box hedges are trimmed into geometric shapes, and statues of nymphs and satyrs peek out from behind cypress trees. As you walk along the gravel path, the gravel crunching satisfyingly under your sandals, if you're wearing them, you look down at the floor of a nearby portico. This brings us to a quirky, fringe tidbit about Roman art that you can see right here. We often think of Roman statues as perfect airbrushed gears with six-packs, but the mosaics here in the Baths of Caracalla tell a different story. There are famous floor mosaics depicting athletes, boxers and wrestlers that are shockingly realistic. These guys aren't pretty. They have swollen cauliflower ears, broken noses that didn't heal right, and scars on their foreheads. They look like modern MMA fighters after a bad night. The Romans admired the ideal, but they also had a weird fascination with the brutal reality of sport. You look at the mosaic face of a battered boxer and realise, I saw that guy in the locker room earlier. The sun is getting lower now, casting long, dramatic shadows across the grass. The light is turning that rich, golden honey colour that photographers dream about. This is the golden hour of Rome. You find a spot to sit on a low stone wall near a fountain. The water trickles soothingly. You're dry now. The sun and the air have done their work. Your skin feels soft, likely the softest it has been in months. You feel a deep, heavy relaxation settling into your bones. It's that specific feeling you get after a day at the beach, a good tired. You watch the people around you. The frantic energy of the afternoon has dissipated. People are moving slower. A group of friends is sharing a flask of wine and a loaf of bread they bought from a vendor. A couple is walking hand in hand, scandalous, near the flower beds. You realise that this place, this colossal marble-clad machine, is the true heart of the city. It's not the forum where politicians lie to each other. It's not the Colosseum where people die for entertainment. It's the baths. This is where Rome is human. This is where the armour comes off. You feel a rumble in your stomach. All that heat and cold shock burns calories. You suddenly crave food. Not the fancy peacock tongue stuff, but street food. You can smell sausages cooking from a vendor stand near the exit. It smells like roasted pork, coriander and fish sauce. It smells like heaven. You stand up, stretching your arms over your head. Your towel is dry, your body is restored. It's time to head back to the Hypocaust, retrieve your tunic, hopefully it's still there, and return to the real world. You walk back towards the main building one last time, not to enter, but to pass through to the exit. You look up at the towering walls of the Caldarium from the outside. You can see the smoke rising from the chimneys on the roof, the exhaust of the hypocaust fires that are still burning below. The machine never stops. It will burn all night to keep the water warm for tomorrow. You navigate the returning crowds. You are part of the exodus now. Thousands of clean, relaxed Romans are streaming toward the gates. You reach the locker room. It's quieter now than it was when you arrived. You find your niche. Miraculously, your tunic is there. The boy you paid to watch it is gone, but he did his job. Or maybe you just got lucky. You drop the towel, which belongs to the baths, into a pile of used linens that will be washed by an army of slaves later tonight. You pull your tunic over your head. It feels rough against your smooth skin, a reminder of your station in life. You strap on your sandals. You are dressed again. You are no longer just a body. You are a citizen, a subject, a person with a name and a job and debts to pay. But for the last 2 hours, you were a king. You step out of the Caldarium and head for the main exit gates. The air outside the complex walls is starting to cool as evening approaches. The noise of the city is waiting for you. You step through the massive outer gates of the Thermae Antoninianae and back into the reality of Rome. The transition is almost physical. Behind you lies a world of marble perfection, controlled temperatures, and the sound of splashing water. Ahead of you lies the chaotic, messy, vibrant sprawl of the Eternal City. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple and deep indigo. The golden hour has faded into the blue hour, that brief, magical window of twilight before true darkness swallows the streets. The air is cooling rapidly. You can feel the change on your skin, which is still radiating the warmth of the Caldarium. It's a pleasant contrast. Your core is a furnace, but your face feels the fresh evening breeze coming off the Tiber. You are not alone in this exodus. A river of people is flowing out of the complex with you. Everyone looks a little bit looser, a little bit softer than they did when they went in. The frantic energy of the day has been boiled out of them. Shoulders are lower, steps are slower. It's the collective post-spa glow of 1,000 Roman citizens. As you merge onto the Via Nova, your senses are immediately assaulted by the smells of the evening. And let's be honest, Rome at dinner time smells amazing. Lining the exterior walls of the bath complex and the surrounding streets are dozens of tabernae and popinae, shops and snack bars. The baths make you hungry. It's a physiological fact. You've just burned a ton of calories shivering and sweating, and now your body wants fuel. You stop at a counter opening directly onto the street. A mainstream historical fact you might recognize is the Thermopolium. These were the fast food joints of the ancient world. They had L-shaped stone counters with large clay jars, dolia, sunk right into them to keep food hot or cool. They are everywhere in Rome, serving the vast population that lives in apartments without kitchens. You look at the offerings. There's a stew of lentils and bacon that smells hearty, but you want something portable. You point to a tray of small, flat meat patties. This brings us to a delightful fringe tidbit. You're about to eat an Isixia aumentata. It's a mixture of minced meat, pine nuts, pepper and wine shaped into a patty. Basically, you are eating a Roman hamburger sans the bun. It's salty, savoury, and exactly what you need after 2 hours of sweating. You hand over a few copper coins, grab the patty wrapped in a fig leaf and take a bite. It's hot, greasy perfection. As you chew, you navigate the darkening streets. The noise level has changed. The roar of commerce, the wagons and the shouting merchants is dying down, replaced by the sounds of domestic life spilling out of the windows. You hear babies crying, mothers scolding children, and the clatter of pottery. But the streets are also getting more dangerous. Here is where we hit a significant scholarly debate. The safety of Rome at night. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of the vigils, the night watch. Founded by Augustus, these were essentially a combined police and fire force. They patrolled the streets carrying buckets and axes for fires and clubs for heads. Some scholars view them as a highly organised, effective paramilitary force that kept order. Others see them as corrupt, ineffective, and mostly interested in putting out fires rather than stopping muggings. Looking at the shadows lengthening between the tall apartment blocks, you decide to walk a little faster. You don't want to test the efficiency of the vigils tonight. Rome has no streetlights. Unless there is a full moon, the city goes pitch black. Wealthy people have slaves walking ahead of them with torches, carving out bubbles of light in the gloom. You, however, have to rely on the spill of light from open doorways and your own memory of the potholes. You trudge up the stairs of your insula, your apartment building, It's a rickety 5-story walk-up. The lower floors are made of brick and concrete. The upper floors, where the rent is cheaper, are made of wood and wattle. You live near the top. The climb is the final workout of the day. Your legs, still jelly from the heat, protest with every step. You pass the doors of your neighbours, smelling cabbage and garlic, hearing the muffled sounds of arguments and laughter. You reach your room. It's small, barely more than a cubicle. The furniture is sparse, a wooden cot, a chest for your clothes, a small oil lamp. It's a stark contrast to the porphyry floors and gilded vaults you just left. And that is the genius of the baths. For a few hours you lived like an emperor. You soaked in the same water, walked on the same mosaic, and breathed the same steam. But now the illusion is over. You are back in your box. You light your small clay lamp. The flame flickers, casting dancing shadows on the peeling plaster walls. You sit on the edge of your bed, the straw mattress crunching under your weight. You feel incredibly clean. It's a rare sensation in the ancient world. The oil has left your skin supple. The scraping has removed the itch of the dust. The cold plunge has left a lingering tingle in your nerves. You run a hand over your arm. It feels polished. You lie down. You don't bother with a blanket. The night is warm, and your body is still holding on to the thermal charge of the Caldarium. You stare up at the ceiling of your room. Outside your window, the city is settling down. The carts that are banned during the day are starting to rumble into the city for the night deliveries, a low, distant thunder. But you are too relaxed to care. The bath coma is setting in. Your eyelids feel heavy, weighted down by the luxury of the afternoon. You think back to the dome. You can still see it in your mind's eye. The steam swirling in the shafts of sunlight, the golden glint of the mosaics, the echo of the water. It feels like a dream now. You take a deep breath, inhaling the smell of the olive oil on your skin and the faint, lingering scent of the wood smoke from the furnaces. It is the scent of civilization. You close your eyes. The noise of the carts fades into a rhythmic drone like the ocean. You are drifting. The stone of the bathhouse floor, the heat of the water, the shock of the cold, it all blends into a singular, heavy sensation of peace. You have survived the Baths of Caracalla. You have purged the city from your pores, and now, finally, you can rest. And so, the great bronze doors have closed behind us, and the fires of the hypocaust are banked for the night. The water in the great pool settles, turning into glassy mirrors that reflect the moon rising over the Palatine Hill. The shouting of the vendors, the splash of the divers, the whispers of the politicians, it all fades into the silence of history. The marble columns stand guard in the darkness, silent sentinels watching over an empty empire. You can feel the weight of your own body now sinking into the mattress. That deep, radiating warmth we gathered in the Caldarium is still there, living in your bones, softening every knot of tension, unraveling every worry. It's a heavy golden feeling anchoring you to the bed. Let your breathing slow down. Match the rhythm of the water lapping against the stone. In and out, slow and steady. There is no more rushing, no more crowds, no more noise, just the quiet, cool air of the night and the comfort of being perfectly, deeply at rest. The city of Rome sleeps, and so should you. The aqueducts will keep flowing, the water will keep heating, and the world will be there when you wake up. But for now, let the steam dissolve, let the stone cool, and let the darkness wrap around you like a soft, warm towel. Drift away from the Via Nova. Drift away from the noise. You're safe, you are warm, and you are ready to let go.